Welcome to Cultivating Pleasant Places. This is Brenda Dillon, and today I wanted to talk to you about traditional education. This is a specific philosophy. It's the one that our schools use. So, a lot of families are very comfortable when they switch to homeschooling using a traditional method. And I am a fan of tradition. In my introductory video, I said I'm not very traditional, and that's because I ended up liking other forms of education, which of course you can see in my previous videos. I go into each of those: classical, Charlotte Mason, unschooling. But I do like tradition. So what I like about the traditional method is that there's a lot of tradition there. I think immediately of the type of school that my mom went to, my grandma went to. I have fond memories of chalkboards. I love teachers giving lectures with elbow patches, libraries, globes. You can't see it very well, but I actually have the wooden desk that my grandparents bought from a school that was remodeling. So probably a turn of the century wood desk. I would love to have my kids sit there and do schooling just like generations before them did. The problem with any tradition, though, is where did it come from? When did we start doing school at desks, in rows? Where did it come from? I love G.K. Chesterton's quote about the fence. He's talking to new reformers, and I'll just read you the quote. He says, "There exists in such a case a certain institution or law, let us say, for the sake of simplicity, a fence or gate erected across a road. The more modern type of reformer goes gaily up to it and says, 'I don't see the use of this, let us clear it away.' To which the more intelligent type of reformer will do well to answer, 'If you don't see the use of it, I certainly won't let you clear it away. Go away and think. Then, when you can come back and tell me that you do see the use of it, I may allow you to destroy it.'" So we definitely have a reformer in our day and age that is going around tearing down everything just for the sake of destroying and tearing down tradition. What's the use of marriage? What's the use of all kinds of institutions? They just want to tear them down and can't really explain why that institution is there in the first place. And I want to be a more thoughtful reformer. I do think that some institutions need to be reformed. There are certain gates that don't, and fences that don't serve a purpose. So I started digging. Where do these traditions in school come from? Where did we get them? And this is going to be the first video where I am not completely positive in my approach. I like certain things about the traditional approach, but there is a lot that I do not like. But I'm going to explain why. It's because it's not traditional enough for me. So our education system, it wasn't mandatory until early 1900s in the United States, but there was a movement called the Prussian education system that was begun over in Prussia during Frederick the Great's reign. He got it from Wilhelm von Humboldt, and it was a very militaristic approach to education. So this is where they first started pushing for compulsory standardized education with testing every year and grouping kids by ages and grades. And the goal was to have a compliant group of civil servants that would follow the orders, and it would make for a great military. But a lot of people kind of caught that spirit and said, yes, this is a great system, let's bring it to America. And John Dewey, Horace Mann are big names in the education system here. I learned about them when I went to college to become an educator, and they wanted to bring compulsory standardized education to America. And John Dewey had this progressive idea of reforming schools, and he wanted to create, he thought you could shape society and do it through the education system. And so as I'm looking at what do I want for my kids, I see good elements of, I want them to be disciplined. I want them to have a yes ma'am, yes sir attitude. I do think there is a place for obeying orders and knowing what the expectations are, but really I want my kids to be able to think. And so I kind of wrestled with this. What is the purpose of education? Why is our education system the way it is? Is it the best? Is this a fence that we should reform or leave be? And honestly, I found that it was a new fence. It really, in the larger scheme of history, has not been around that long. So before, what was school like before? Before John Dewey said we need to reform this school system, and it was one room schoolhouses, or back in the Puritan times and Revolutionary times, the responsibility for educating was on the parents, and parents wanted kids to know the Bible, and so it was very important that their kids get an education. Alexis de Tocqueville came and right after the Revolutionary War and said, what is democracy like in America? What are these Americans doing well? And he loved what we were doing. And he said, even the backwoodsman will go out with an axe and a Bible and a stack of newspapers. These people are very educated. And that didn't mean that everybody could read. Some people couldn't. There's always been times in history where people could not read. But the general populace was very well educated. So the National Assessment of Adult Literacy looked at what kind of how well adults are reading now, and they found that only 13% of adults in the United States could read Common Sense and understand it. And that was written, it was called Common Sense because Thomas Paine wrote it for the general populace, and 20% of the population in America bought it. Now, maybe not all of them could read, but they expected someone to read it to them, and we can assume they understood it because it was an argument, a common sense argument for people to read. So I would argue, even as we've made education more compulsory, our literacy rates have been dropping in the sense that, if I were honest, I go back and I read works that were written during the Revolutionary War, during the classical Greek period, almost any other period in history, and I'm just happy if I can understand it, right? But we want to shape kids that can think and understand and be part of this dialogue. And so I propose that this is a fence worth reforming, and in general, I do not like the traditional approach to schooling. If you're comfortable with it at first, that's fine. Honestly, having a consistent routine, showing up every day, reading with your kids, working on math. Again, I like structures. I like schedule. I think it's great for developing discipline, and start with what you know. But I would argue this is not the most traditional approach to education, and that it's a little cookie cutter. So my problems with the traditional approach is it's cookie cutter, and it inhibits real thinking and problem solving. This obviously with the grades, putting kids together, lumping kids together in grades. We're not doing that at homeschool, but we kind of still do. A lot of parents, when they start homeschooling, ask, how am I going to teach a kid in first grade and seventh grade and third grade? And I just recently read a book that's fiction. It's Understood Betsy, but I love the look it takes at a time in history where they were starting to group kids in the city into grade levels. So Betsy is a character that moves from the city where she's grouped with other kids her age. I believe she's fourth grade. And then she moves out to the country where they don't have a large school population, and they're still using the one-room schoolhouse approach. So she comes in and the teacher says, well, let's see where you are. And she tests her reading. She has her read a passage and says, oh, you do such a wonderful job of reading. I'm putting you in seventh grade. And Betsy can't wrap her mind around that. I'm not in seventh grade. Why are you placing me in seventh grade reading? And she feels so much guilt. She goes up and tells the teacher, my math is so terrible. My sums, I can't be in seventh grade. You're going to find this out when you test me for math. And the teacher said, well, don't worry about that. We'll test you for math and place you where you are, which ends up being in the second grade level. And she's mortified. Second grade? Why am I being placed in second grade? But she comes home and wrestles with this and realizes, and that was one of the benefits of a one-room schoolhouse, is that teachers had all these kids in different levels and they could just meet them where they're at. And that is one of the benefits of homeschooling, and why homeschoolers have such a hard time answering the question, what grade are you in? Because parents quickly find out, oh, we need to work on math a little bit. We're behind. You're way ahead in science or spelling or some other area. And so we very quickly fall out of a grade level. The kid just is where they are, and we will do the math that they can do, and then slowly level up as they master each subject. And so it's kind of in homeschooling circles, we laugh about, oh, we don't know what to say when parents ask our children, what grade are you in? It's complicated. Sometimes we just do subjects together. Why is there a fifth grade science? We study biology when we want, and the human body, and there's not really grades for that, grade levels. It's funny. So I am sorry to be a little bit critical in this video, but traditional schooling, I have a love-hate relationship with it, and mostly hate. So I hope it's helpful, though. I hope it makes you think a little bit. Why is it there? Why do we think this is a traditional method when it's really a new, modern, progressive approach to education? And maybe there's something that's a little more traditional that says, here is an ideal. I still think I am for conforming to an ideal, not conforming to a system, but conforming to an ideal. And I think the classical approach does that better. They hold up, here is an ideal soldier, an ideal statesman. Of course, we want to develop good civil servants, but we don't do that by emphasizing conformity to a group identity or to state standards, but we do it by holding up an actual ideal statesman. So put any comments you have below. Please like, subscribe, keep following me. I'd love to continue to foster a discussion around education.